everybody, welcome to my channel. This is Tracy here with Not Afraid of Color, and I thought I'd show you today, because I promised you in a live the other day that I would show how to, first I would practice this technique and then show you how to do it. This is a Maxfield Parrish painting, a famous one. And here's what I came up with, and I'm also going to be showing you my mistakes because it's important. Using what I had, so this one uses a couple of Lavinia stamps and a Fairy Hugs stamp. And I'm gonna just talk about, you know, what you can do different, what I did different on the next one that I do. I wasn't crazy about how she stamped out, so I tried to color in with a Posca. And here's the obvious mistake in this one, other than the fact that I left too much empty space on the other side. So really need to think about spacing, and my horizon was too high there. This one, my horizon's good, but look what happened. Double stamped, and still I've got the castle on the wrong side. So let's go ahead and see if we can get everything into proportion here. And I'll kind of go through the supplies with you, but honestly, there's a whole lot of them that I used in experimenting with this technique. So I've got VersaFine inks, I've got Simon Hurley inks, I've got Distress Oxides, and quite a few, and I'll just go through the colors with you as I use them. And there I've got my little stamping acrylics. I will be also using my stamping platform. And then what you have to do then next is decide on your subject matter. So you've got a foreground subject and a background subject. And I noticed that, you know, the black VersaFine doesn't stamp very good over oxide, so I keep the background mostly in dye inks so that my stamps will stamp nicely. And I'm going to use this little fox today, but you could use just about any stamp you want for your foreground. So I've got several different fairies. You saw that I used her. Now this stamp right here, that's the only castle I have. That's a Lavinia castle. You could use a cityscape. And then I've got this big old rock from Fairy Hug stamp, and it's basically gonna be my foundation for what she sits on. On the original one, I didn't put as much detail, so I wanted to add a little more detail. If you never purchase another stamp, buy this one. This is the Fan Coral from Fairy Hug Stamps. And this is how I created the happy little bushes, and with several shades of green. So you can make a decision. You could have a silhouette, you could have an actual person, you could have a giraffe and a cityscape in the background. It really doesn't matter. What matters is, you know, what you how you compose. So I've got, you know, my little finger blender that I end up not using in this one. I've got several I've got these tiny little brushes, and I've got these little makeup brushes that I got from Amazon, and they have a little brush on the end, and then they have a foam pad on the other end, and they're really great for detail work. I've got my Posca pens, I've got some Jelly Roll pens, and I didn't do any wings this time, so we're not going to bother with coloring in wings. And then finally you're going to need paper, right? So, and I use my mint tape to get my horizon. I'm going to hit, yeah, I'll use my stamping platform for my main image because I want it to be nice and dark. So we're just gonna need paper. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut up some paper here. And I use the Accent Opaque 110 or 120 pound cardstock, just plain old cheap cardstock. Okay, now you can use whatever you want, whatever works for you, however you like your ink blending. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this down to 4 pieces, and yeah, I might need 4 pieces at 5.5 by 4 1/4. You know, I like to have some for my mistakes there. And you saw that I made many. The ones I showed you are just the ones that I dug out of the trash. I had so much work experimenting with this. So, and I apologize if it's a long video, but it's kind of a long process. So we might as well just get started here. And so first of all, you have to take a look, and you want to look kind of at the rule of thirds. And so I want my horizon at 1/3, right about there. And you can eyeball that, but I'm going to mask off where I want the top of my water to be so I can start in on my sky. I want to get it as straight as possible, and you know, nobody's perfect, but I'm going to turn my paper sideways, and I am going to start out with Simon Hurley's Over the Moon at the very bottom next to the water. It kind of represents sun or something like that, and I'm just going to kind of go back and forth and just make sure it's nice and deep at the water line. And you know, it's hard to see, but it's barely any. And then I'm going to go in with the guppy. I'm just going to go here and there and add, just deepen that color a little bit. And then I'm going to go in and start from the top of the sky with the Midnight Snack. And we want to leave quite a bit of white space, because that's going to be our clouds. And so rather than trying to paint in clouds, the more clouds you leave, the better. And then I'll go in with a little bit of clear sky. So I start deeper and then I go in lighter, and just here and there. And I wipe my brush off before I go in. And then finally, I am going to go in with an oxide up top, because I won't be stamping up at the top there where it really matters. And so I'm going to go in with a little Salty Ocean to get a nice deep blue. And you can see that it does kind of build up clouds there. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to flip my tape around so that I don't accidentally drag some yellow. Go ahead and turn my paper sideways here. And a little bit of yellow can hang over. See, I'm worried there that not enough's hanging over. So I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I can see a fine sliver of a line. And then I'm going to go in with VersaFine Clair in the Twilight, and with an ink blending brush. I have mine separated, and I'm holding down that tape to make sure it doesn't slip up under, and trying to go pretty much in a back and forth motion. And this doesn't have to be perfect. It's, you know, it's water. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you see those little bald spots, because I have a plan there for the side of that, which is a tree. And I'm going to go ahead and clean off my mat. Love this mat. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do is just make sure that thing is really nice and dry. And notice I haven't added any pink yet. I haven't decided whether I want pink in there or not. And certainly you can make those decisions when you come to them. It's your painting or your piece of art. And this is, you know, what I call small art, but I do decide to go in with the sidewalk chalk really light, just in a couple areas. And yeah, not much at all. So next thing I want to do is I want to set my foundation. What is my subject going to be sitting on? Because I'm not going to have it floating in the water. And so I choose this rock, and I'm just going to use the VersaFine Clair in the Nocturne. And I just ink that up so it's nice and juicy, and just kind of decide where I want that to sit. And of course I want it to sit offset a bit, because I'm going to be putting a happy little bush on the right hand side, a big one. So that's pretty simple. Just get that laid down, let it dry. So next thing, these are going to, by the way, that's the mask I'm using for the bubbles, and I've shown it to you before. And practice bubbles if you can. What we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and stamp the castle in now. And I kind of just lay things down to see my placement. And this is, again, a Lavinia castle. And I'm going to stamp that with Morning Mist, the VersaFine Clair and Morning Mist. And I don't need to stamp the bottom part of it, because that's, you know, in the water. So I'm just going to lay the ink on the top portion, and avoiding that area at the bottom. Just let's clean up, because you know, I don't want things to get too muddled. I'm just going to lay that down, and I want to stamp it fairly close to the top, where the little steeples are at the very top. Doesn't have to be perfect, because it's going to be mostly covered in clouds. But now that we've got that stamped down, we can make sure it's dry, and then we'll start working on our bubbles. And I have a full video devoted to how to make bubbles, but these bubbles are a little different because they're going to represent the colors that are on the picture. So I'm just deciding where to put bubbles, and I'm just doing a light outline with a pencil. I don't need any over to the right because again I'm going to have a bush there, so there's no point in wasting the time dealing with them. Guess I thought I'm going to put one more bubble here. And your bubbles, put your bubbles where you want them. It's your picture. You can have as many or as little as you want. So next I'm going to go in with this hickory smoke. And now here's the tricky part, so pay attention. And I didn't speed this up on purpose. Practice, so I've got my little practice piece there, and I'm going to take this tiny little brush, just a little makeup brush. You just want to make sure you're using a small brush and a very light hand. And again, I made that mask just out of a bunch of my infinity dies circles and just cut out the various sizes of circles. And see, I'm going to dab off most of that ink onto my little, and I'm going to start from the outside, and I just want to get, and I know my fingers are in the way, but I don't have any choice here. I just want to get the outside edges there. And it doesn't have to be perfect. These bubbles are very forgiving, but you see how I've gotten some depth to that bubble. And I'm just going to continue doing the circles, again dabbing off. Now this one you'll barely see because it's in a white background. That's okay, because these are in the clouds, like the Maxfield Parrish picture I showed you. The bigger ones are obviously easier to do, easier to get around than the small ones. That's okay. Just get them around to my will. See, that one's just barely visible. But they are supposed to be on top of the castle. And so I'm just going to go in and again just tap most of the ink off and lightly go around the edges. Just want to make sure you don't get too much ink on there. It'll get too dark and too hard to spread. I'm just kind of going around in little circles there, spreading that out. And another one up here. So what you're going to do is later on you're going to add color into those that represents the color that they're in front of. So, I'll add a little bit more blue in where the blue bubble is, where it's under on a blue sky, and I'll add some yellow where it's on a yellow sky, and you'll see me make a mistake and add way too much pink. That pink's a little tricky to work with there. I went in a little bit too heavy-handed with it, but I found a way to correct it. And there's always ways to correct your mistakes unless you get that inky mistake, which that glob was too big. I ended up, Nancy Stamps showed that how she does surgery on her stamps, and so I did some surgery on my stamp so that the next one, on the one that I already showed you, would not get that, accidentally get that little, I don't know, overstamp, whatever you want to call it. And we just got one more bubble to go here. This is where it's fun mixing inks and oxides. Again, the oxides sit on top, so you have that ability to lighten things or darken things. But you see, I've got my bubbles now. I'm going to work on getting some color into them. And you don't necessarily have to do that, but it just kind of enhances it a bit. And so I'm going to go in with the, I'm going to go in with the Clear Skies here up there at the top, and grab a clean little brush, or clean off my brush that I have there that I was using the gray with, and I'm actually using, the brush end. Brush some of that off, and then I'm just going to kind of blend a little bit of that color into there. Just make sure you dab off. And sorry about my dog there. He went crazy when Mike came home. So I'm just going in here and I'm just adding, again, just enhancing the color inside of the bubbles. And you can go crazy on that one if you want to. Just the whole idea of having the bubble be clear is to, not introduce a lot of colors that aren't in your background. But I'll go in with a little bit of the Over the Moon there on the yellow bubble. And let's see here, just to kind of enhance the color within the bubble. And just These little brushes are great for spreading ink. I'm like impressed. They were just cheap makeup brushes I got from Amazon. And then I'm gonna try and go in with a little bit of the Sidewalk Chalk there. And here's where you see I get a little, I forget to dab off, and I get a little heavy-handed, trying to spread it around. Not working out that great, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine because I'll be putting some clouds over that. And so our clouds are a little bit different than you're used to. It's not a stencil type cloud, so just keep that in mind. But what we need to do next is we need to add the highlights to the bubble. And I've got a Posca pen, which, you know, works intermittently. So I'm gonna go in first with my Posca paint pen and just basically put in some shapes, and they don't, it's just basically scribbles. So, you know, just kind of getting a glob of white there on the one side. And you do, when you're doing bubbles, you want to keep your light consistent. And so, and then I'm just going to do a little line, and that just enhances the bubble. Do another little line. Again, this bubble is very hard to see. Because it is, you know, based right on top of that castle, and that's okay. So I'm just going to continue to just kind of color in that little spot right there, and then do a little kind of little curvy line there on the opposite side. You do want to do that on the opposite side. You can go in with dark lines too if you want to, but I'm just trying to keep it light here. I'm definitely no professional painter or artist or anything like that. I just kind of do what I like. And I like those. They look like bubbles, so I'm good with it. So next thing I want to do is I want to go in and I want to put my little fox, now he's my focal point. So I want to make a decision on where he's going to sit. And I also need to make some little clouds over my little bubbles, and I particularly want to correct that pink one. And so I'm going to go in with my Hero Arts Hero Hues in Unicorn White, and just start to create clouds with this tiny little brush and just small little circular motions. I end up later switching to my Ranger. I like it better. It's a little bit more opaque. This one's kind of a little bit too see-through, but it's a start. This will be a build-up situation where I'll start and then move on to something else and then come back and do some more. But I'm just basically doing little circular motions, creating those clouds on top of the bubbles. And sometimes might have to go in with a little bit bigger brush. This is still a really small brush, and I only use them for white. And then I'm going to just come in and do those circular motions again, trying to cover that castle in clouds. It gives it that more sense of distance or being up in the clouds. You know, giving it that more kind of fairy situation. But you can do this same thing. Let's just say you had like a New York skyline, and then you had a little fox and you wanted him to be out in the woods looking over New York. Maybe you don't want bubbles, but it's the same principle of what I'm doing here. This one just happens to be kind of more fantasy with a castle. So I'm just going in various places and doing circular motions, creating that kind of foggy, cloudy look. By the way, you see I got a new what do you call it, little baker's mat. I love these things because it holds my ink, it holds my picture, holds everything, cleans up really nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and go in and just draw some little clouds at the bottom along the water line. And I end up going in later with some paint because my Posca pen just isn't working properly today. It's probably almost empty. I use it a whole lot. But now let's go ahead and get our little fox on here, or a little coyote, or whatever he is, little cute animal. So I'm going to kind of lay him on, and I need to look at his positioning because he is a focal point, and I need to think about the rule of thirds. So I need to make a decision where he has a good spot to sit, where he's still sitting on that rock and not floating in plain air. So I'm just going to bring in my stamping platform here. And guys, I tape my stuff down. I just don't trust magnets. They get in the way, and I just don't like them. Because I know from experience that when I'm doing a silhouette stamp, for the most part, it's going to need to be stamped more than once. And it always lifts. I don't know if it's the Versamark ink or what, but it gets sticky and lifts. So I'm looking at him, and nope, he's way too low. I need him up higher. Yep, I guess I'm okay with where he is. His little nose in the bubble. Nope, he's too low. I don't like him there. I'm going to go ahead and sit him up a little bit higher. There we go. Now that's 2/3 of the paper where the top of my focal point is. And, you know, give or take. Of course, I'm not actually measuring. I'm just eyeballing. And I'm going to go ahead and use my VersaFine Clara that I just re-inked to coat him. And I'm not going to emboss him or anything because I'll be doing some work over him. And this is totally a flat card. There's no dimension to it whatsoever other than visual. So easy to frame, easy to send. And let me get my little chunky tool and get him good and pressed down. Yeah, nope, not dark enough. I need more. You can see in the top that it just doesn't have the darkness it needs. Straighten out my tape there and do it one more time. Lots of ink. I'll wipe off that little spot that's gonna inevitably get on my paper because that's how I roll. And just clean up anything I can so I don't get that extra black goober on my painting that I've just done so much work on. And just let that ink soak in. I want to press down on that spot where I can see that I've got a bubble in my stamp. But I don't dare move it at this point. There we go. I'm okay with that. I have a plan. Since I bought a re-inker, I'm just going to go ahead and paint in any kind of bald spots with the VersaFine Clara Nocturne re-inker. Because I don't want... You see, if you were to do that background with oxides, there would be a definitive line between the colors, and I don't like that. So that's why I used ink for the background. But you can see already, because of the way I ink, that that water has a little bit of shimmer to it. But I'm just going to go ahead and just one tiny little drop on my little practice piece here. And just go in with my little paintbrush and color that in with paint. Well, with ink. So the good part about that is the ink is the same color, because I originally tried to fix my black ones with Posca pen, and it's just not the same black. But I do want to make sure I spread that out so it doesn't glob up, because it will glob and then kind of look funky. You don't want that. So I'm just going to spread it nicely with my little brush. Just to make sure the top half of him is nice and dark like the bottom half. And I found that is definitely the trick here. And I only got my re-inker yesterday after I'd already done my original that I showed on the Foiling Snobs Club. So I'm real happy that I got this so I can make my painting better. And this is, of course, A2 card size, so you can make it a card, you can mat it and frame it. mine will be a card. Just because I think people would like to receive it. So I'm just going to put my brush in some water and move my little paper aside there, my little practice dabber paper. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure he's nice and dry, because we're going to be working next on the rock. I'm just going to dab any excess. Doesn't that look better? I'll probably do one more coat on him later on, but I just want to move on from here. And so this thing right here, if you don't purchase another stamp like it, I think I already said, this one here is just amazing. And I'm going to start making my bush on one side and then move on to the little rock so I can get it colored. But I kind of want to just check my placement, so that's why I want to start on the bush on the right hand side. And I'm going to go in with the VersaFine Clair in Rainforest and just stamp the heck out of it until I've got a happy little bush. And what you want to do is kind of avoid getting that stem in there. But if you do, you do. It doesn't matter, because there's going to be several layers of ink on this particular portion of the bush. So I'm just going to decide on placement and just start stamping down. And because it's a bush, I want it to be all over the place. I'm just kind of going in and filling in these areas here. I want some on the rock. And just a couple more little back and forths here till I get kind of the shape that I'm looking for. So my happy little bush or happy little tree. And now I want to go ahead and color in the foundation that he's sitting on, because obviously he's not sitting on a blue rock. Well, he could be. I mean, the rock could be any color you like. But for me, it's going to be several colors, and it's going to be lights and darks. And I'm going to start out with the Vintage Photo in an oxide, because the oxide, again, is going to sit on top of the ink that's already laid down. So it's going to allow you to kind of add color, a lighter color. And I'm just going to clean off my brush because I've got some moss color or something on it, and I'm using now the foam applicator of the makeup brush. I'm just going to go in and start to stipple and color in this rock. And again, it's a couple of 3 layers too. You need it to get nice and thick, so it is like painting, I guess. Although I've never painted anything really, I don't think, like, you know, other than something like this, so I have really no idea how to paint. But I've watched Bob Ross a lot, so you know, how hard can it be? Oh God, that guy is so nice. Anyway, I'm just going in and coloring in, and I'm not worried about covering the black lines. They're not that important to me. They will serve a purpose as a guide, and it's okay if I'm going over my bush, because there's several layers going to be going in on my bush as well. And I'm just going to color the whole thing with the Vintage Photo, just to kind of get some color on there that's not blue. And it's okay if I go up over Fox, doesn't matter, doesn't really show. And so next I need to start adding some highlights onto that. And I do want that layer to kind of be dry first, so it does add on top and doesn't mix in. So I'm just going to give that a quick dry with my heat tool. And already I'm good with it, but I really want that to stand out. So I'm going to do a second layer here of the Vintage Photo, just to make sure I've got the color covered up, the blue color. It's like makeup, right? And of course, I don't know how to do it, but I've seen people do makeup where they cover up freckles and discoloration on their skin, and they use either really thick stuff or do multiple coats of different things. So kind of same principle here, just, you know, making sure that I get that blue covered up. And you can make your rock any color you want. You don't even have to use a rock. You can just freehand some of those little fancy hills that you see on all the Lavinia and Fairy Stamper things. But I kind of like having a specific shape here. And so now that I've got the second coat, I'm gonna go in with some Ripe Persimmon. And I know these colors seem like they're really oddball, and don't ask me why I picked them. And if you're worried about it, you can just grab the ink from the side, but I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna dab. And I'm gonna dab everywhere where I think there should be light. And again, I'm no professional, so I don't really know where there should be light, but I'm guessing. So I know that there are crevices in the rocks, so I know that in the crevices we need to have dark, but above we need light. So I've got some dimension on this rock. And again, I'm not going in super heavy, I'm just kind of dabbing and getting that color down. And even though it's orange, again, if you look at a Maxfield Parrish, he's got like oranges and oddball colors in there that you wouldn't expect. And that was because of the method. But now I want a little bit more light, so I'm going to clean off my little applicator here. And I'm going to go in with some dried marigold. And that's going to add even more light. And we're still sticking with the oranges. Wait till you see the next color I put on. You'll think I'm crazy. There's some more light here for us, just in a few little places. Going in pretty light-handed, blending it in a bit. See, I did go wet on wet, so they would kind of blend. But I'm liking the way it's coming out, and just kind of just blending those out, getting light where I think it should be. Yeah, it's starting to get some dimension. And so next I'm actually gonna go in with this Seedless Preserves. Okay, so purple and orange, never good, but hey, it works. Don't ask me why it works, but it works. And I'm just gonna go into the areas where I think the darkness should be and add some color. So like up underneath him and just around those lines a little bit. Not too much, just some. Just add that little bit of shadow there, because I'm going to go over yet with another color to get even deeper shades. And so I'm going to be using the Black Soot. And again, I'm using the oxides. And with the Black Soot, I'm just going to go in around those lines and deepen them, and then just deepen the shadow up underneath our little animal. And is it a fox? Is it a dog? Is it a coyote? I don't know. It's a canine of some sort. He's cute. I love him. I love his little nose, and I love his little fairy ears. And you see, I'm just going in where those crevices are and just kind of deepening the color in there. Nothing perfect. Just to kind of give it a little bit more dimension, and then up underneath our little creature there. And I'm happy with that. I like it. Looks good. Looks like he's sitting on a little bluff or something, maybe, looking out at the castle. And so now I'm going to go back in and work on my bushes, because I want bushes on both sides. And I want some popping up over the rocks. And I'm not going deep on the left-hand side because I don't want to cover him. But I am going to go kind of high, a little bit higher. And I want to make sure that's nice and dry. And now I'm going to actually, once that's dry, I'm going to actually start to go in with some oxides. And so I'm going to start out with the mowed lawn. And my mowed lawn is so concave that I have to fight to get ink on my whole stamp. But I'm just going to go right over the top of that rainforest, what we're doing here is we're working on getting some depth and dimension into these bushes. Gotta love stamping. I would hate to try and do this by hand. I mean, I would try it, but I sure wouldn't do a tutorial on it. And just going in and, you know, laying it down, not making a big deal of it. And next I'm going to go in with the Rustic Wilderness. So again, it's a darker color, but it is an oxide, so it's going to go over the top. And I'm just going to lay that down, miscellaneous places, just adding dimension. See, it looks harder than it actually is. And that's why I was good with doing a tutorial, but I want my tree to be a little bit higher, or my bush, or my greenery, whatever it is. I'm looking good. I'm liking it. I'm happy. So I'm just want to make sure that's nice and dry. Once I've got that dry, decide that I'm going to go in with a little bit more color and kind of pull that Seedless Preserves up into the other portion of the painting. And I'm just going to lightly dab, and whoops, not good. All right, let's try that with a paper towel. It's a little better. It's a little dark, but I'll be putting clouds up over it, so I'm okay with that. And I'm just going to put a little bit over here on this side. Not a bunch. I just wanted a little bit more color in that picture. So next I'm going to go in with my Hero Hues again, and I'm going to use a paper towel. I'm just going to dab over that. And it's okay if I dab over my bushes because they're not done yet. No, they're not. They're going to need more coats. And I'm just going to, you know, add more clouds here and there where I need them. I definitely want to lighten out that one that I kind of got a little heavy-handed with. Again, sometimes I fight with pinks and purples. They go in too heavy for me. And I do want these clouds to cover parts of those bubbles. And so I'm just going in and dabbing, dabbing, dabbing till I get another coat on of coverage of clouds here. And I'll end up even doing more. So it's, again, it's a stepped process. So now I've got that white on there, I can go back in, and I'm going to go back in with this dark green, which is the rainforest, and kind of add a little bit more dimension to those that little bushies. Okay, and then just kind of clean up my mess here. Clean off my stamp, and I do want to clean off this whole thing. Just love, love, love this mat. I wrecked my last one heating it, so I imagine this is going to be a consumable. So you can see I need more cloud cover, and so I'm going to go in with the with my Ranger white because I feel like it works better. And I'm just using this tiny little Picket Fence Studios brush and just doing little circular motions to add more clouds that are, you know, really, really visible. And I want, you know, I want good coverage down towards the bottom of that castle and over my little bubbles there. So it works out well, but you have to do a lot of dipping. And I end up actually using paint because I just can't get the opacity that I'm looking for. And I tried it with my Posca pen on the other one, and the Posca, like I said, my white Posca is acting up. But, you know, want to make sure that I get a lot of good cloud coverage here. If we're going to have a castle in the clouds, we need clouds. So this little brush is great for making clouds. And you could, I mean, if you're an actual artist, you could actually throw some gray in there. But I tried that on one of my prototypes, and I'm not a good artist, so I'm just going to keep what's simple. And just going in here and there. Get some along the skyline, cover up some more of that bubble. Get as close as I can to that Maxfield Parrish look. I never did fix that pink bubble, did I? I would probably, in hindsight, go back in the middle of that pink bubble and do some white on it, because it just is too... You see how many coats it takes to cover this up. Make sure my clouds are all cloud looking. Make sure I get some along the top, a little bit more around the bottom there. I don't know why they put these things over the ink, but they must be important because I keep them. So I'm pretty happy with that, but I really want to, you know, I got to step it up by putting this is a gold Posca pen, and all I'm doing is I'm just putting little gold dots all over, no rhyme or reason, just throwing the dots in, and they're going to serve as either little flowers or little highlights or whatever, because you'll see that I will stamp right on top of those as well. So again, a layering process. But I mean, you don't have to be perfect on these dots, just get them on, get them down. And I got, you know, throw a couple of them on the rocks just for highlights or little pieces of flower that may have fallen down. And just get that gold down. You use any color you want. I just like the gold because it stands out the best. And now I want to do is I've got a 0.5 Gelly Roll pen, and I'm going to make the little water move. And it's just simple little lines. And just add them all through so it looks like we're looking out over a vast body of water. Maybe it's a lake, maybe it's the ocean, maybe it's Greece, maybe it's Lake Tahoe. I don't know, wherever your heaven might be. That's all I gotta say about that. But you want to get quite a few in and make sure they're in all those little spaces. And it just looks like squiggly lines, but you know, it just comes together. And I want to make sure that I'm doing really thin ones. And I'll be darkening down the ones closer to the foreground, because it would look like that. So anyways, what I'm gonna do here is actually, what am I gonna do next? Yeah, I'm gonna get the Nocturne, or the Twilight back out, and I'm just going to use a paper towel, just a little piece with my finger over it, and I'm just going to dab in some color down towards Mr. Animal, so that that color becomes closer to the foreground and makes it, you know, gives you that perspective. And it's okay if I go over him because he's nice and black. You see, that just kind of changes the depth of the water, or the depth of field of the water. So I'm still wanting more clouds in there. And we'll see if I can get it to go, but I already know, because this is pre-recorded, that it just doesn't, I'm not happy with it, and I'm gonna have to go in with some paint. I mean, it's better, and I could leave it, but I'm looking for a pretty solid cloud. So that's okay, because, you know, we're going up into the castle a little bit more. Okay, get that put away. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp over my bushes now that that Posca pen is dry, so that it kind of covers some of those dots and looks more natural and real. And I spend 30-45 seconds looking for my stamp, because, well, you saw the state of my desk if you saw my picture, and the state of my desk is, if everything that you don't see is piled in a million places. Where are you, little stamp? There you are. Okay, now I'm just going to go in and add that extra dimension. It just really makes the bush pop. And now I'm looking at it, my little creature has a light spot in it that I'm not happy with, so you'll see me try and correct that. And you'll see me mess it up and then fix it. Good, I'm happy with that. Clean up my little mess there. I'm going to go in with a little bit of brown on my Posca pen and just put some random dots here and there. No reason for them. Who knows what they are, if anything. There's little dots. Why not have some dots? Now I'm going to go back in and just deepen the white on these bubbles. And you'll see where my Posca pen doesn't want to color in anymore. But I want to make sure that those really stand out. Trying to cover up some of that pink there that I've messed up. It's a little better, but it's not perfect. And this stuff does not like to paint on top of pigment ink. And I'm going to go in and do the almost invisible bubble, and this is the one where it starts looking weird because my pen just kind of starts running out of ink. Or paint or whatever it is. Try to go over it, it just makes a mess. So I'm going to just dab that off. I'm going to try it with my Jelly Roll pen, my 10. Or is this my 5? I don't know. I just want that white part to stand out. Again, this stuff does not like to color over pigment ink. But so you can see that I still need some more opaque white, and he's discolored, and I'm not okay with that. So I'm going to go ahead and do another coat of the VersaFine Clair and the Nocturne with my re-inker, and I've got a brush here that was in my water that I try to use, and you'll see what happens. We drip water. And you think this ink is non-reactive, but you'd be surprised. So watch what happens here. And I'm just going over the parts that I need to be a little bit darker and then trying to spread that ink out. And there comes the water from my brush. Oh no, why did you do that? I'm just gonna dab that off, and I'm gonna get a clean brush that isn't wet. Gotta be careful, those brushes, man, they sneak up on you. Find myself a good brush. And I tend to let my brushes sit in the water a long time before I take and clean them. There needs to be a pretty good pile of them. There's a little long piece sticking out there. I don't want to accidentally drag ink onto my picture. I think I got it. There, dab, dab, dab. Very carefully, because I don't want my paper to start to disintegrate because it got wet. There we go, I'm happy with that. So again, you can make anything you want in your scene. You don't need bubbles or anything else. Just bushes and a guy sitting on something, looking out into the horizon of some sort. But I did say that I'd show you how I did this technique, so that's what we're doing. I want to make sure he is good and dry, because I don't want to smear it because I've done a lot of work so far to this. And I have sped up parts, and we still have a long video. So there's where I'm not happy, because I can still see the bottom of the castle, and I don't want to see that. So I'm going to grab some white paint. And this is the old school kind, so I'm just going to pour a little drop onto my little mat here. And I'm going to grab a clean brush. And I want a smallish brush. And I'm just going to start to paint in some clouds so I can get that opacity that I'm looking for. And just doing little circular motions there. Try not to get it into the water. If I do, not a huge deal. Just want to make sure I get the shape that I need. I want to come up over that bubble some. And just kind of move the paint around, because it is kind of globbed up right now. I don't like it in globs. I want it to be spread out nice. Now I'm going to just do a little tiny one there in the distance. And another teeny tiny one over here in the distance. And then just build up on my little cloud there. Make sure it's shaped the way I need it to be shaped. In a cloud shape, whatever that might be. So many shapes of clouds. And I need it to come up a little bit higher here. I don't really want to get it on the bush. If I do, I do. Not a big deal, but just want to make sure that I've got a good shape that just doesn't look like a blob of white. There we go. I'm happy with that. That looks like a cloud. Clean that up. Give it a little bit of a dry here. And so I'm not going to mount these on anything today. Just wanted to kind of show the video of how I did this, so that you could try it on your own. And again, use any inks and oxides that you have. Use any tools that you have. I mean, paper towels, cotton balls, whatever you have. And there we are with the finished product here. We've got that bubble that you can barely see, and I'm not happy with the white on there, so I'm going to go in again with my Posca. I probably could have gone in with paint and just kind of cross my fingers and then hope it gets in there the way it should. So that you can see that bubble that's mostly see-through. I want to thank you for supporting my channel. I appreciate everything that you guys do with your comments and your thumbs up. Here are the two that I've done, both each different. Of course, that's the way it's going to be. I really like the dimension that I got with the rock on this little one, so I'm glad that I got to show you. So go ahead and give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell if you want to be notified. And I hope you have a great, awesome day. Thanks for watching. Bye.